Hey, thanks so much for clicking on the video. I am going to be going over Monster Hunter Frontier today. In all of my other history videos, I have done all of the footage recording myself, but that was pretty difficult or almost impossible to do for Frontier. Luckily, I met people that have the resources to get me the footage I need, but because of the limitations of that, there's going to be less dedicated footage of certain things that I'm talking about. I try to use screenshots that are available online for some of this content, but it's not possible for all of them, and I apologize for that. So when watching these videos, you'll generally see me hunting a monster and talking about something completely different, but again, I try to show some of that footage when I can. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to talk about. I think the video is still very informative, and hopefully you have a great time with it, and again, if I got anything wrong, let me know. Monster Hunter Frontier is notorious within the Monster Hunter community due to a lot of players that have not gotten to experience it, calling it not a real Monster Hunter game. Which makes some sense as it's a spin-off MMORPG designed for the Xbox 360 and Microsoft Windows service. Two consoles that never saw releases for the series by this point in time. I can think back to discussions on the game with other Monster Hunter fanatics and a lot of disdain surrounding some of the mechanics, but mostly the monster designs and their power levels as they get progressively more flamboyant and intricate in comparison to the grounded designs found within the mainline series. But maybe Frontier wasn't that bad. In fact, maybe through its development and updates and releases, it's actually an incredibly good, albeit difficult Monster Hunter experience. Maybe some of these monster designs and mechanics are incredibly unique. Maybe some of these monsters would even make it over to the mainline series. Oh wait, that actually happened with Hypnocatrice and Lavasioth. This series of videos is coming from someone who never really got to play Frontier when it was alive. Yes, was alive, because as of writing this, the servers have been shut down and there's currently no real way to play Frontier legitimately, though there are people working on that. Together, you and I are going to look at the development of Monster Hunter Frontier, from its initial inception to release to the updates and expansions created for it. We'll dive into features offered in the series and try to compare gameplay to gameplay of mainline titles. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how intricate and interesting this game's combat was. Think old school Monster Hunter on crack. It's pretty wild, and I'm excited to show it to you. This first part in the history series will be focusing on the initial release of Monster Hunter Frontier and a lot of its major updates from Season 1 to 5. Future videos will focus on the final season updates from 6 to 10, the Forward 1 to Forward 5 updates, the G1 to G10 updates, and finally the Z/Zenith releases. If you haven't watched my previous videos on the history of the series, I suggest you do so now. Additionally, if you enjoy these videos and want to help support the channel, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It just takes a couple of seconds and really helps boost the reach of the video to Monster Hunter fans everywhere. I'm Super Rad, and today I'm here to bring you a brief history of Monster Hunter Frontier. A quick note before we get started. These videos will be going in depth about the history, development, and mechanics of Frontier specifically, as well as showcasing the monsters that were released throughout its lifetime. This is not an opinion piece about the difference in monster designs compared to mainline games, and shouldn't be taken as such. Rather, use these videos as a way of understanding what Frontier was like and to have something to point to if anyone ever asks you about it. Additionally, I won't be going deep into Mesoporta Square until the end of the series, as it will be better to look at the hub as a whole with all the changes implemented. Okay, so actual development history is hard to come by for this series. Originally, Frontier Season 1.0 was released for Microsoft Windows in Japan in 2007 and a Korean release in 2008. It'd be 3 years later in 2010 that the game would be ported over to the Xbox 360. By the time of the 360 release, it would have already been updated to Season 8.5. There was even a release in Taiwan, though this was translated by a third party. The actual Japanese version generally remained around 9 months ahead of the Taiwanese version, give or take in terms of content. It wasn't impossible for Western players to get their hands on the game and give it a shot, but it could prove to be rather difficult. Take the Korean release for example. For whatever reason, the Korean game requires players to provide their valid social security numbers, which would be compared to a government database. This meant Western players had to get their hands on a real Korean social security number and essentially commit identity fraud in order to play. Luckily, the Japanese version only required a VPN, but back in 2007, those were still a bit more difficult to come by, unlike today where you can use something like NordVPN. No, I'm not sponsored by them, so don't worry. The game used built-in IP blockers to prevent players from outside of their respective country releases to be able to play without the use of one of these VPNs. One of the benefits of playing on the Korean server with a social security number was that the Korean release didn't require a monthly fee. When initially released, you could consider Monster Hunter Frontier to basically just be a re-release of Monster Hunter DOS. Players even started in the online hub town of Dundorma from DOS's release. This would later change to Mesoporta Square, which would be the main hub for the rest of future releases and would be updated throughout. The game seems to have had its first closed beta near the release of Monster Hunter Portable 2nd, and was meant to have an open beta release June 21st, 2007, but this was unfortunately postponed to June 28th as a technical test was required. One major feature to notice during these beta and tests was how wards and worlds worked. Players new to the game and just starting out could join servers for players that were HR 15 or lower, generally known as tutorial wards. Other players would be able to go to wards that allowed access to players HR 30 or lower. This allowed players to focus on playing with people closer to their skill level if they wished. It wouldn't be until July 5th, 2007 that the initial release of Season 1.0 was finally available. Let's take a look at some of the key features and monster additions from Season 1 to Season 1.5. The main features introduced in Season 1.0 were 2 new monsters and a new area to hunt within. First up, we have Hypnocatrice. If you watched my history video on the 2nd generation of Monster Hunter, you may remember that 2 monsters originally introduced in Frontier made it over to the mainline portable series. One of these was Hypnocatrice, who only ever appeared outside of Frontier in one game, that being Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. It's a large bird wyvern that has the ability to knock players unconscious using its sleep sack and can deliver powerful kicks with its strong legs. Lavasioth was the second new addition to Monster Hunter and also made it over to mainline games through its initial appearance in Freedom Unite. Unlike Hypnocatrice, it managed to appear in future mainline releases in the series, but none of its subspecies or other Frontier-specific species have made it over as of yet. It's a Piscine wyvern that can live and swim through lava, using the magma as armor around its body as it hardens. Hypnocatrice was available day 1 with the release of Frontier Season 1.0, but Lavasioth wouldn't be accessible until August 8th. This would be the general release plan for all major and minor updates. Release these updates with all of the new monsters and content, but only make new monsters and content accessible every month or so in order to boost the playtime and longevity of the series. You see this in a lot of other MMOs as well to keep the people subscribed. The other big addition was the inclusion of the Great Forest area. This area also made it over to Freedom Unite and acts as a tropical rainforest setting the player will hunt monsters like Hypnocatrice in. Some of the events to make note of throughout Season 1.0's lifespan are the rollbacks required due to the inclusion of N-Protect Game Guard, the anti-cheat software used to prevent players from hacking the game. Apparently there was some issues with its inclusion that caused some sort of crash, resulting in a rollback around August 17th, 2007. Following this, there was also a large series of bans in September that were apparently accused of being false and unjust. Also due to the poor implementation of N-Protect Game Guard, which is notorious for being an awful anti-cheat software. I don't have many more details on these events as they were so long ago, but it wouldn't be the first time we've seen a game with a wave of bans that were not deserved. Along with all these new additions were monsters and areas previously seen in DOS. With the release of the 1.5 update on September 5th came other 2nd generation monsters like Jan Garuga and Tigrex, although Scarred Jan Garuga is 1st gen. Along with the inclusion of returning monsters was the upgrade to Hunter rank. Originally, Hunter rank could only go up to 50, but now could reach the 51 to 99 range. One thing to note is that the seasons mechanic from DOS was also implemented by this point in the series. I won't go into detail about how it works, but if you want to know more, check out part 2 of my mainline history series, which goes over all of it. One of the aspects of this mechanic is breeding season, and on December 5th, 2 new monster additions were added, those being breeding season Hypnocatrice and the Red Lavasioth subspecies. Breeding season Hypnocatrice is very similar to your typical, but is considered a variant, a male Hypnocatrice that changes its color to a more vibrant pink hue during the mating season. It's faster than your typical Hypnocatrice and more resistant to damage. Red Lavasioth is a subspecies. True to its name, it's almost completely red on the top portion of its body and is stronger and faster compared to your typical Lavasioth. It also has the ability to shoot a trio of magma balls at hunters. One final thing I won't go into too much detail about are gallery decorations, which were best in slot armor skill decorations players unlocked through designing a custom room within the game. Through customizing this room space, players would be gifted some of the best decorations in the game, as well as farming upgrades through loyalty stamps players received through the creation and purchase of furniture. With these major additions out of the way, we can move on to the next major update, Season 2.0. Season 2 of Frontier was released January 30th, 2008 and really started to carve its own path in design and mechanics. In an interview, one of the developers stated, "I wonder if the original concept of Monster Hunter Frontier finally started in 2.0. Some of the biggest additions included were the implementation of Hunter rank 100 to 199, as well as a new flying wyvern known as Spinoff, and multiple quality of life features that I won't be going into too much detail about. Spinoff is similar in design to Rathian, being able to both breathe fire and expose the player to the poison ailment. It can also paralyze hunters as well. Its body is covered in large pink spikes where its poison resides. When enraged, its veins will glow and be visible, similar to a Tigrex. Its fireballs have the ability to cause both poison and paralysis at the same time, making them incredibly dangerous. It's typically fairly passive, but once enraged becomes incredibly aggressive and uses all of its abilities against hunters. Another big addition was the inclusion of SP weapons, armor, and decorations. SP weapons were low rarity weapons that were required for specific special quests that would unlock access to other quests through their completion. The SP armor players could unlock was special in that they had no armor skills and only decoration slots. To make up for this, SP decorations, which could only be used on SP armor, were ridiculously strong. One could even offer plus 20 to expert. It can be noted that the addition of the variants and related new elements really marked a line in the sand for a lot of people about the direction that the series was going, and a lot of traditional Monster Hunter players began to drop the series at this point due to the new features and various balancing issues. The unique mechanic of weapon length was also introduced. Weapons could now vary in length between 5 basic sizes from very short to very long. These lengths would affect the hitboxes of the weapons, and generally the longer the weapon, the more usable it was, with some incredibly short weapons not being usable at all. Generally, long length was the most ideal. The 2.5 update was released April 23rd and brought with it a new Spinoff subspecies, featuring warmer reds and yellows around its body in comparison to the cooler greens and pinks. On top of producing larger fireballs, this subspecies was also able to launch them from its feet and create gigantic explosions. On top of this, instead of paralysis, it could now inflict the defense down ailment to really deal damage to hunters. 2.5 also raised the HR cap all the way up to 999, with players unlocking almost all available content around HR 100. It seems like the Hunter Festival was also introduced with this update and was an event that lasted through the game's entire lifespan. The festival was a multi-week event where every guild within the server would get assigned to either a red team or a blue team. It's a rather intricate competition, so I won't go into too much detail about it here, but teams would compete to collect more souls through hunting monsters and other various means, and by meeting certain thresholds would be offered rewards. The winning team would get access to special quests for a week after the competition. Points could be earned and spent at a specific festival location attendant, which was incredibly useful for collecting rare G-rank monster parts. Some of the parts were only a 2% to 5% carve chance, so it was extremely useful. The point system specifically wasn't introduced until 3.0, however. Let's take a look at Season 3 now. Season 3 released July 2nd, 2008 and marked the 1-year anniversary of Frontier and included multiple new monsters, gameplay additions, and gameplay improvements. Felines had multiple updates and player customization was improved with multiple new hairstyles. The players also obtained more customization options for their player homes, and armor color customization was finally introduced. It also brought with it a new hunting area known as Great Forest Peak, an arena area at the top of the giant tree within the Great Forest that was mostly home to the new Hypnocatrice edition by this point in the series. Speaking of that, 3.0 brought with it 2 new monster additions, one of these being Silver Hypnocatrice, a rare subspecies of Hypnocatrice which is much more powerful than its typical counterpart. It has better control over its sleep sac, more powerful kicks, and can cause tremors when it lands on the ground. Along with the new rare subspecies came Akura Vashimo, a brand new carapacean monster similar to a scorpion, with large crystals growing around its body. On top of paralysis, it can also inflict a new ailment called crystallization, where the player will be covered in crystals that must be shaken off. Their max stamina will be lowered to the lowest level possible, and if they don't shake them off in time, they'll explode. One mechanic I haven't mentioned yet is friendship skills, where players with similar name icons based on armor colors would get specific buffs when in a quest together. This was quickly made obsolete, however. Additionally, servers that required players to have a maximum rank, known as expert districts, were also abolished. This season was also when service started in Korea, although it only lasted there for 3 years. Season 3.5 released September 3rd, 2008, and brought with it a new monster as well as the inclusion of the Versus Quests mechanic in dailies. Akura Jebbia was a new carapacean similar to Akura Vashimu, but not a subspecies. Think Hermitar and Shianatar from the mainline games. It is white and blue in color in comparison to the purple of Vashimu, and can also inflict the crystallization status ailment. It's stronger and faster in comparison to Vashimu and can throw its crystals as explosive projectiles. Versus Quest functioned as a competitive race to hunt a monster the fastest. Within this mode, 2 groups of 2 would enter a single map together, however each team's map would be instanced. Basically, the teams could see where the opponents were on the map, but not interact with them or their monsters. The goal seems to have been to hunt the target monster before the other team manages to do so, and players could use items on opposing teams for various negative effects. We're moving on to 4.0 now, and I just want to point out that all of these designs for monsters so far I could fully expect to see in any mainline Monster Hunter title. I think the series gets a lot of flack for its monster designs and gameplay, but realistically there's a good portion of the game by this point that any mainline hunter would enjoy. 4.0 was released December 17th, 2008. For a good amount of content up to this point, well-known video game producer Yoshinori Ono had been working on the series. Ono is best known for his work as producer and executive producer on many of the Street Fighter games, and was even the producer on the cancelled Deep Down title from Capcom. Ono stepped down during 4.0 and was replaced by Kazunori Sugiura, who has worked as a producer on many Pokemon titles including Mystery Dungeon, Masters, and Shuffle. First bit of new content to note is a new hunting area called the Gorge, which changed from a sunny day to rain and thunderstorms at night. The area features 2 specific types of cacti, which when consumed can offer defense and attack boosts to the player. It was also one of the first areas to have destructible environments that the player may need to get through to access the rest of the map, such as long tough grass that could only be destroyed through slashing weapons like longsword. The next big addition was the inclusion of a new thunder element wyvern known as Beru Kirurosu, a large flying wyvern with a single horn on the top of its head and long tendrils on each of its wings. It has many electrical attacks, but the most notable is the lightning beam it shoots, similar to that of a Rajang. It has quest-specific behaviors, so it does not always act the same when hunted, and when enraged can perform a dive bomb maneuver which creates a large explosion around the surrounding area. By this point, Beru Kirurosu lives specifically within the New Gorge area. Something to note as well is that previous monsters from mainline inclusions of the series were still being implemented within these updates. Not only that, but these monsters may even get reworked moves or new moves altogether. For example, Teostra was made more difficult by giving its fire breath a longer range and wider explosion area. Poogie also marked its inclusion as a support character by this point in the updates, but having it depart with you was dependent on a spawn rate. The Poogie could often get sick and refuse to go on quests, but there was ways to cure this. Similar to Palicos, Poogies could come out on missions and even be able to get extra monster cards out of hunts for you. Poogie even had its own skills to boost its effects when out in the field with you. Poogie could even consume potions instantly for hunters to heal them when they were in a pinch. It seems that at this point a time-based free-to-play mechanic was added, maybe a trial period of some sort, but it seems more like it was a severely limited free mode that locked players out of most of the content. The development team was also getting a lot of backlash from fans due to the broken promise of items never being purchasable. What those items are, I'm not sure, but adding a real currency shop left a bad taste in players' mouths. A lot of players at the time considered this a turning point for the series and was thought to cause a second wave of players dropping the game altogether. Despite this, it was revealed that there was actually an increase to player population at this time, most likely not from traditional mainline fans, but other players starting to see interest in the absurd power scaling. Season 5 was released on April 9th, 2009 and brought with it the removal of Dundorma and a renovation to Mesoporta Square, further solidifying that Frontier was moving away from aspects of the old games. Paria is a brand new water element flying wyvern introduced in this update. Surprisingly, it is not considered a Piscean wyvern or a leviathan despite its fish-like appearance. It's considered a glutton and will eat most food around it. After eating too much, it can regurgitate the food, which can then sometimes be gathered through by hunters for additional rewards. Hunters can actually gauge what type of food it wants to eat based on the color of its drool, and if constantly fed effectively, it will become overly full and be forced to ignore hunters and digest. Hunters can interrupt this by attacking or flinching the enemy, causing it to use the food within it as a weapon. Season 5.5 released June 17th, 2009 and marked the second anniversary of the Frontier series. It not only brought a new rare species, but the intricate Rasta system. The Rasta system was a way for hunters to bring along AI companions into hunts instead of requiring additional real player characters. Rastas were available after HR 11, and by taking them with you on hunts, players would earn points which would allow them to buy better equipment for the Rastas. Players can set up their own Rastas, but have the ability to contract other players as well. How the Rastas function and act within a hunt is dependent on the hunters you are contracting from. The white Espinus rare species was finally introduced into the series with this release as well. It now has the ability to inflict poison, paralysis, and defense down ailments on top of its typical fire abilities. It has better accuracy with these moves as well. It has a super ability where it flies into the air and unleashes a huge poison fireball to the ground below. Players then need to trip the Espinus, otherwise the areas it stomps on will be left with a fiery poison area of effect, making hunter mobility more difficult. While the previous two Espinus have been rather passive until enraged, this rare species will be enraged as soon as it wakes up. Another inclusion to Season 5 are Hunter Gems or Hunter Pearls. Basically, hunters would have colors assigned to them, and each day, a monster type would be assigned to a specific color. Let's say that Elder Dragons were assigned to green. By hunting Elder Dragons, you would raise the points in that specific color. If you were assigned the green color, you could get bonus points as well. By raising the cap of all colors, you would be able to move on to the next rank of your Pearl, and there were 9 ranks in total. The level of your Pearl would correlate with the amount of extra bonus skills you could equip, such as not flinching when initially sighted by a monster, or no stamina reduction when climbing. This was done through the new caravan site area, which included the required quests, known as caravan quests. Players would have to be at least HR 17 to participate. Capping the color to rank up the gem isn't the only requirement, however. Players must earn caravan points and spend them to properly rank their gem up. If it hasn't been obvious by this point, Monster Hunter Frontier offered an incredible amount of content almost every month, and while the monsters started to get more intricate in both their design and abilities, the abilities of hunters did the same. From new decorations, new armors, new weapons, and abilities. Weapon length specifically is something I could definitely see in a mainline series, and the same can be said about the Rasta system. Maybe a system where we could take AI versions of friends we've made online and receive the guild cards of. I think a lot of hunters that hate on Frontier generally criticize it for similar reasons that I criticized World for. The series does in the future start to get faster paced, aggressive, and kind of absurd with the power of monsters and their abilities. But something you should keep in mind is that Frontier isn't a mainline game, and it's a cool look at what these developers have come up with and think about how they could be implemented into a mainline game. Even with how excessive some of the content gets in the future, looking at Frontier from 2007 to 2009, I can say that they really keep the atmosphere and the feel of the old school core Monster Hunter experience. These are long videos and require a lot of research. If for some reason there's an error, feel free to comment below and let me know. I always try to add corrections when I can. The next part of this history series will cover the remaining updates within the Seasons era of Monster Hunter Frontier. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Again, it only takes a couple of seconds and helps support me in my goal of creating this content for you all. I try to respond to every comment that I can, so if you want to hear from me, be sure to let me know. Additionally, feel free to join my Discord, which you'll find a link for below in the description. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey, I'm back, and thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. That was so amazing of you. I really appreciate that. Hopefully you liked what you watched, and if you did, I just want to say thanks to some specific people that made this video possible. First off, I just want to say thanks to the Fist.moe Discord, fist.moe Discord, I'm not sure. thank you guys so much. They are a dedicated Frontier community. They have a ton of knowledge about Frontier, and they pointed me in the direction of all the information that I got for this video. They were extremely helpful. Thank you to Band Lagaya Cruz and Kogath for getting me in touch with some members of the Frontier community. Those specific members were Sarah Symmetry, who I am hoping I pronounced that right, and Ascalon, who I am also hoping I pronounced that right. I really hope so. Really hoping I got that one, guys. They proofread my video to make sure that it was accurate, and they also provided additional details that I didn't have originally, like about Poogie and about the hunting pearls or hunter gems or whatever. So thank you guys so much for that. If I missed anybody else, I'm so sorry, but yeah, shoutouts to you guys for making it to the end of the video again and watching all of this content. Hopefully it's been entertaining to you, and I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video, probably next week, hopefully. Okay.
上手に焼けました。